This is Brent. Brent Allen Winters, commonlawyer.com, www.commonlawyer.com. One more segment, the Catechism, Constitution of the United States, 1828, published Arthur J. Stansbury, published in Boston by Hillard, Gray, Little, and Wilkins. Hillard. I grew up with a boy named Hillard. I said question 20. Question 20, Catechism of the Constitution. Were these laws good and wise? We said that, yes, pretty much, but they got out of hand. Question, what did the colonies do then? Answer, they made complaints, and they reasoned for a long time with Great Britain, trying to persuade her to act more justly. As a matter of fact, our Declaration of 76 makes this point. And at the end of our Declaration of 76, it says all of our communications, all of our pleas have been met with abuses. Now what do? We've come to you with hat in hand and in respect. And in our Declaration of 76, we make a plea finally with consanguinity. That's it. But consanguinity, common blood. You've heard the word sanguine. That means blood in Latin. And consanguinity means common blood, with, same blood with you. We made that plea too, and it didn't help. They came over here and burnt our towns, ravished our coasts, I'm quoting from the Declaration of 76, and turned loose the merciless Indian tribes against us, who make no distinction, it says, between race, sex, or condition of infirmity. Now, I might have stuck a word or two in there that wasn't there. Make no distinction between sex, age, or condition of infirmity. I think those are the words that are used. In other words, the Indians, you turn them loose on us, you give them whiskey, you give them guns, they slaughter us without any mercy. Little babies, they read about the colonists up in New England especially, and the Jesuits would incite the Mohawk against and other tribes against them, and to read the diaries of the people that saw what happened. They'd come down in the wintertime when the snow was on, and they'd say it'd be hard in some of those villages to find snow that was white because it was so red, soaked with blood when they got done. That's how vicious it was. It's hard for us now to imagine what our forebears and our ancestors went through. They were tough. They played tough. And they knew it was life and death just being here everywhere they went. And as we tramped across the continent and hacked our way through, our forebears, they met with the same thing clean over into Kansas and Colorado and the Rocky Mountains. Nothing but bloodshed and bloodthirstiness and slaughter and torture. And they faced it and they fought it. And they fought it hard. And for us to criticize what happened is not right. We could not have understood what it was like to be in that kind of a world unless we were there. It was bad. Oh, I know there are abuses on both sides. But still, do you think you'd have done any better? And I have to say, I don't believe you would have. I don't believe you'd either been like all them. Some of them were cowardly, some of them weren't, but some of them fought back hard and they didn't stop. I was telling you about that Swiss immigrant. His family came here, and all of his family, the tribesmen, the red men, slaughtered mercilessly. All of them, his brothers, his father, his mother. And because of that experience, he spent the rest of his life perfecting the art as an Indian fighter, and he was out to kill all of them he could. Again, I don't criticize him. How can you criticize a man that lives in an environment of that kind of viciousness and that kind of hate? And once it ratchets up, it's kill or be killed. Well, times are rough, and we learn things here, our forebears learned things here that the Englishmen knew nothing about. And Ben Franklin made that point when he went to England. He stayed there a long time. He got to be known. He was popular. He was well known. He was one of the most popular men in Europe because of his scientific discoveries and the wealth he had amassed. And he said to them when he spoke to Parliament, and he spoke to them individually and in mass, and the emissaries of the crown, he said, our conditions in the New World are not like your conditions here, and you fail to understand what we face and our attitudes toward life because our conditions are different. And by the way, the beginning of anything is the most important part of it. The beginning of anything is the most important part of it. Where I began my life has dictated my whole life to me, who I am and how I act. No question. Yours too. The beginnings of countries and states dictate what they'll do and how they'll act. The beginnings of businesses will dictate. It doesn't go away. That's who you are. And us as Americans are who we are because of the way we began and the struggles we faced as a people, as a culture. It's our heritage, and it doesn't go away. And what we should do, according to the Bible, is to take it. And if there's anything in it that isn't good, test it and throw it out. But don't throw the whole thing out. Don't be one of these kind of people that wants to destroy all of our history in the past. That's the evil empire. That's Babylon. That's communism. That's what they always do. That's what Egypt did in the Bible. That's what all the revolutions of the world have done. Destroy all memory of the past. Never speak about what went on before, said the Russians after the revolution of 17. Tear down all the statutes, all the people who were back then. Well, if you do that and you ignore your history, you're ignoring not only the bad things, which gives you the lessons to not do that again, you're ignoring the good things that gives you something to aspire to. No, you take it all. And if you're not willing to do that, you're going down. This book we talk about so much doesn't gloss over any bad things and doesn't ignore any good things. It says it all. That's why I believe, of course, one of the reasons why, one of the arguments for its inerrancy and that it is from God. Men don't do that. But God's people have the capacity to not ignore their past, good and bad. And that's how you move forward. Because as a Christian man or woman, the Spirit of God lives in you, and you can recognize what is good in your parents and your grandparents, and you can recognize what is bad. Throw that out and try to concentrate on something good. But if you just ignore it, you'll get worse. Your country will go down. You'll go down if you ignore your past. I was in a parade when I was running for Congress once. I love parades. You walk along, hand candy to people, throw candy in the back of the crowd. People love it. Yeah, they'll go like this. You throw a piece of candy. I had candy vendors that supported me. They'd provide all the candy I needed to do that. But the evil empire on the other side would send along their distractors to be in the parade, along the parade route, to try to fight with me while I was doing that. And I had to learn how to handle that. And I'd be handing out candy. And it's fun because if somebody running for office comes along and picks somebody out that looks obscure, that's not trying to get my attention, some older woman or some older man who's quiet or some little child who feels left out, you can pick them out and then pick them out and give them a piece of candy. That's what makes it enjoyable. Then they smile, and they'll never forget that, see? Well, I gave a piece of candy to one gal. She weighed more than my pickup truck, had on a moo-moo dress, and had an ugly look on her face. And she started screaming at me, and she said, "I don't care about history," because I like to talk about history. And somebody told her what to say, no doubt. "I want to know what you're going to do for me right now. If you can't tell me that, I'm not going to vote for you." Well, what do you do in those situations? You just move on real quick, forget it. No sense talking to her. But it makes the point. The people that say, "I don't care about history," are going to get worse. Their lives are going to get worse, and they're a detriment to our country. You heard the old saw, those that do not know history are destined to repeat it, and that's dangerous, of course, because a lot of bad things happen. But notice with me, what we call the conservatives, those are the folks that are interested in history. I've discovered that through the years. I like to talk about history. I've taught history. I teach it. I don't get the left-wingers come and listen to me. No, they don't care. All they want to do is get vengeance. in the future. That's all they want to do. They're not even willing to build a better future. They just want to be vengeful. Well, what did the colonies do then? Question number 21. They made complaints. They reasoned with the English for a long time, the Great Britain, trying to persuade her, there's that feminine again, to act more justly. Question number 12. Did Great Britain listen to their complaints and repeal those bad laws? Answer, no. But instead of that, sent over ships and soldiers to force us, Americans, to obey them. Now, that's not entirely true. He's a little off here. They did repeal the Stamp Act. See, they listened to some reason. They did some of those things. But at the same time, they used the tool that they had, and they had it in spades, the British Navy and the British Army. They were the most powerful military force in the world at that time. Well, if that's the tool you have, that's what you use. That's what they were used to doing. Just crush the opposition. Very dangerous to have that attitude. If you have the largest military force in the world and that's your answer to problems, it's going to backfire on you. That's the position we're in today. We're in the same position today that England was then. What are we doing? We're running around the world crushing people that we don't like. And it usually ends up being somebody that the president or somebody sitting in the White House doesn't like. Bill Clinton sends our air forces over and bombs a aspirin factory. Why did he do that? Didn't do any good. He did it so the American people would say, there, we did something. Lyndon Johnson kept sending troops to Vietnam. Why? Because his attitude was, and his political strategy was, if there's a problem anywhere in the world, I go kill some of them. He said this. I send the military over and kill a few of them, and that satisfies people politically. Okay, Johnson did some. He killed some of those dirty, rotten communists. And it became a policy to say, and General Westmoreland said this in Vietnam every evening, and he kept saying it to everybody he saw, we're killing more of them than they're killing us. And that's supposed to satisfy people politically, and it did for a long time. Every night, Walter Crank case. Remember him? He'd come on the news every night and evening, the evening news, and say it was either 5 and 10 Americans were killed pretty near every day during the heat of the war. But then he'd report 100 or 150 KIAs killed in action. And then people were satisfied. They were satisfied. That's silly, and it doesn't mean anything, but they were satisfied. KIAs became everything. But like this one senator said to Westmoreland said, but look, Senator, he said, we're killing more of them than they are of us. Send us more money, send us more equipment, send us more boys. And the senator said, people in America don't care if we're killing more of them than us at this point. What they care about is those body bags that come home to small town America. They see that. That's what they care about. And that can't last forever. And it didn't. That's bad policy, KIAs. Well, that's what the British had. They had that kind of attitude because they had a large military force. That's why our Constitution in the United States says we're not to have a standing army. We're not to have a standing army. Standing Navy, that's okay. That's a different animal for a different purpose. The same purpose, only a different part of the same purpose, I should say. Well, Great Britain, he said, by and large, they did not listen to the complaints. They did repeal some things, but they just kept coming with trying to control. And what had happened during the years of George I and the years of George II, there was no control at all. Americans did what they wanted and became very prosperous. And then all of a sudden, George III comes along at the behest of all these greedy thugs in Parliament and said, you got to get some control of these colonies. But he tried it, and it was too late, you see. That's what happened. It was too late. How often have I seen men away from home? They come home after being gone, military service, business, or maybe for wrong reasons. They come home, and they try to take control of their family. Children don't even know who they are. Mom's been running things for a long time. It causes all sorts of problems. All of a sudden, they had no control. They'd let things go, and now they come and try to take control. It doesn't work well. It causes problems. I'm not going to talk about the answers to the problems, but maybe to make that analogy, that's what happened in the American colonies. He said, we're going to take control here. Too late. It's too late. And they weren't going to tolerate it. They were enjoying too much freedom. They were too prosperous. Question number 23. And did we obey? No, the people of the colonies consulted with each other what was to be done, and at length took up arms, but raised armies as they could through the militia, of course, and they had few soldiers, no experienced officers, a little money, yeah, they had that. They carried on a war against the whole power of Great Britain, and having, with the aid from France, forced 2 British armies to lay down their arms, surrender themselves prisoners, and they at length compelled Great Britain to acknowledge their independence. How did they do it? Did they really whoop the British? And the answer is no. Oh, they had some individual battles they won. They had some individual engagements at sea that they won. But how did we win? We really didn't. You know, George Washington refused to face off with the British for 7 years. 7 years. Why? Because he knew he'd lose and the war would be lost. So he was hoping to build the army up or find the right opportunity. And there were plenty of battles, but they were inadvertent. They weren't him trying to square off with them. You know, if a guy has a big army, he said, look, I want a chance to square off with these guys and whoop them. I think I can whoop them. That never happened until the very end, when the French fleet had blockaded, and then the opportunity occurred, bang, General Cornwallis made a military blunder, got himself trapped. We had him trapped. We knew we had him. We whooped him, and that was the end of the war. But the way we really did it was, here's how we did it. We just never quit. We just never quit. We did the same thing to the British that the North Vietnamese did to the Americans in Southeast Asia. They just never quit. And we got tired of it, and the body bags started coming home, and the political will at home kind of began to wane. There were riots and demonstrations. You remember all that, some of you. That was because the Vietnamese never quit. They just kept coming back at us with crossbows, bamboo-made weapons. They were shooting our helicopters down with steel rods taken out of automobiles and inner tube tires out of bicycles, like a giant bow and arrow, boom, up through the rotor. They learned how to do war without money, without equipment, and they just didn't quit. And we, of course, we were trying to think that killing more of them than us would win, and that's not what wins wars, killing more of the enemy than you. You only win wars, listen, you only can win a war by taking dirt, by taking territory and hanging on to it. There is no other way to win a war. And don't let anybody ever tell you different. And if you're not committed to do that as a nation, you're going to lose a lot of men, a lot of folk are going to die, you're going to spend a lot of money, you're going to break up a lot of families back home, and you're going to lose. And that's what Vietnam was, because we didn't fight it for dirt, for territory, for conquering land. Everything in the Bible, everything in God's world, everything in reality is about land. And if land isn't what you're trying to take, you're trying to kill other people. You know the old comment, George Patton, that you don't win wars by dying for your country. This was a speech he made to the troops as they moved forward in Europe. You don't win wars by dying for your country. You win wars by making the other poor SOB die for his country. Well, he was trying to fire up troops for battle. It is true you don't win wars by dying for your country. That's true. But neither do you necessarily. The foundation isn't winning wars by making somebody else die for his country. Or you may have to do that. But if that's the ultimate goal, you're going to lose. The ultimate goal is, if you have to kill the other fella, you take his land. Period. I like to talk about reality here. I don't want to talk about fantasy. I don't want to talk about the way things could be in La La Land. I don't want to talk about utopia, like, what was that guy's name in England? They cut his head off. His name was, he was a Romanist. He was a brutal man, tortured and killed a lot of people. He's glorified now. Thomas More, Sir Thomas More, yeah. There's nothing glorified there. He got what he did to other people. Oh, he got it in an illegal way. Yeah, they They didn't follow due process, but still, in the sovereignty of God, he had done that to a lot of people. He's not a hero. He wrote a book called Utopia, The Way Things Ought to Be. It was La La Land. It was Romanism. It was the canon civil laws of Rome. It never happens. In the common law tradition, we talk about facts and we talk about reality. The reality is you've got to take land or you're going to lose the war. This is Brent. Brent Allen Winters, commonlawyer.com, www.commonlawyer.com. Commonlawyer.com, coming at you from the remote hinterlands of the Wabash, the River Valley, where the hogs, the frogs, and the dogs keep up the racket all night long.